Hi, my name's Dave Adolph, and I'm the anatomy and physiology teacher at Methacton High School. In today's presentation, I'm just going to give a brief overview of a little bit about me and a little bit about how the class is going to run. So first off, this class is called Human Anatomy and Physiology. So I'm sure you're all aware of what anatomy is, but a lot of people just kind of drop the last part. They say, "Oh, I'm taking anatomy. I sign up for anatomy." But this class it's really a balance of anatomy and physiology. So I want to talk about that for a second. So anatomy is simply the study of what it looks like and where it is. So if we're talking about, let's say, a bone, for example, I want to know where it's located and what its structure is. I want you to be able to identify it. Now, physiology, on the other hand, is how something works. So with physiology, I want to know how that bone grows. I want to know, how does it make blood cells? What happens if it breaks? How does it heal? So together, you get what is called anatomy and physiology. And the little phrase that's written at the bottom of the slide here, I'm a big fan of this phrase, and it's form equals function. And that's the beauty of anatomy. And it's why I love teaching this class. The human body makes a lot of sense. Nature does not like waste. Nature does not want to waste resources. So when we evolved, when you look at the human body, everything makes a lot of sense. There's a reason for it being there. If it looks like it does it, it probably does it. I say that a lot. And that's the idea that form equals function. What it looks like and what its shape is and where it's located dictates what it does. And what it does dictates what it looks like. So those two things go hand in hand. And I like that. If you look at a structure, you can probably figure out what it does just by analyzing it. I cover a decent amount of information in this class. When I designed the course, I took over about 7 or 8 years ago. I could treat it a couple different ways. And my goal as an educator is I want to prepare my students for college level anatomy. Most of my students are either seniors, or I have a handful of juniors, and they're going off into some field like occupational or physical therapy, nursing, maybe a doctor, maybe they want to be a trainer. Maybe they're just interested in it. So I wanted to make sure that my students were prepared for a college level anatomy. So when they get into that class, they feel like they know a lot of the content already and they have a strong basis in anatomy. So what I decided to do is, instead of trying to cover all of human anatomy and just do a little bit of each thing, I decided to spend a lot of time on several of the organ systems that are the most important. I actually contacted my old anatomy professor from college, and I asked her if she wouldn't mind giving me some feedback as to what would you want your students coming in knowing. What are the things you would want the high school teacher to cover? And I used that feedback to help design the class. So as you can see, we are about halfway through our first unit, which is the intro unit, which covers anatomical terminology and just some basic biology review. And then we go right into the tissues unit. If you've ever heard the term histology before, that's the study of body tissues. That's what a pathologist does. So if you want to be a pathologist that studies disease, essentially you would spend your entire day on a microscope looking at different tissue samples and trying to figure out what's wrong with them. So we're going to talk about the different tissues of the body, and unfortunately, since we're not in the classroom, we can't use microscopes. But in reality, there's so much online that we can use in the place of that it shouldn't be a problem. Then we go into the skeletal and then into the muscular system. That takes us to about the halfway point of the year. And then we finish up the year in the second half of the year with the peripheral and central nervous system. So the first part, we're just looking at neurons and how they work. And then the second part is we're going to focus on the brain and on the spinal cord. And then the last few units are cardiovascular, the heart and the blood vessels. Then we do a unit on the blood and the immune system. So if there's ever a year where that's going to be something that we want to study, this is it, right? And then finally, I try to cover as much of the endocrine system as I can. I don't do a full unit on it just because of time, but I include it throughout the other units. Okay, just a little bit about me. I've been here at Methacton this is my 15th year, and I taught a few years before that in some other districts. I am the advisor for a club called the Medicine and Science Club, which I haven't really told the students about yet because of the fact that it hasn't started yet because of virtual learning, but we will get rolling soon. What it is, it's a club of students that I had one of my students reached out to me 4 or 5 years ago asking me if I'd be willing to be the advisor for this club she wanted to start. And I thought it sounded like such a great idea, and we've really grown it over the years. What we do is, let's say I'm 16 years old and I want to be a doctor. Okay, I want to be a doctor. Well, now what? What's the next step? What school do I want to go to? What courses should I be taking? So essentially, this is a group of students that looks into that and tries to figure out what are the career opportunities, what are the possibilities out there, and if I want to do it, what do I do? So we actually have speakers come in throughout the year, and anybody that's listening to this right now, if you work in the medical field or the science field, if you would be willing to volunteer your time, that would be amazing. We're going to have people come in and speak about their career. So, like for example, last year we had a Villanova neurology professor, we had a physician come in, we had a dermatologist, an occupational therapist, and they just give a brief overview of what they do, and more importantly, how they got there. What are the steps they need to take? And then the kids can ask questions. We also raise money for medical charities like St. Jude's. So it's a great club, and I will promote it with the students once we get rolling for the year. Also, I was originally a physical therapy major, and that gives me a little bit of background in this class. I've done human cadaver dissection. I determined when I got to my fourth year and I started doing my rotations that I did not like it. It was not a good fit for me. And luckily, I thought to change it, and I did. I changed to biology, and I got my teaching degree. And I love, I mean, this is my 19th year teaching, so obviously I like it. But I'm so thankful about the fact that I get to use everything. You know, initially I was pretty frustrated because I learned all that content. I spent 4 years learning a PT field, and then that was it. But now, at least with this anatomy class, I can use that content and help the students. And I can also give them the perspective of somebody who went through a high level medical program and how that goes. How am I going to grade? Well, grading's a little different this year. Normally, tests are worth a high percentage in this class. I'm trying to prepare the students for a college level where tests are everything. You know, at the college level, you don't get homework grades. You don't get lab grades. There's a separate lab class. So the students have to really understand that everything that they do in class is to prepare for the test. And then that test is how they show that they understand the information. That may not be the most ideal way to learn, but that is how the system is set up, especially if you're going for something science or medically related. Most of my classes in college had 4 tests that determined the grade. And if I bombed one of them, that grade was compromised, right? So I'm really trying to have them still understand that, but there's not a weighting to the grades because of the fact that we're not in the same environment. It's really hard to control the tests. So it's going to be a total point system, meaning that everything's worth the same value. There will still be assessments. They're going to be worth a certain amount of points that are higher than a normal assignment, but they're not going to be weighted. And again, that's because of the environment that we're in. Finally here, last couple things. I really hope we get back into the building because we got some really great dissections we do in anatomy. I didn't get to do any of them last year because they all get done in the spring, and we ended up having to leave in March. But at the end of the heart unit, we do a pig heart dissection. At the end of the brain unit, we do a sheep brain. And at the end of the year, we have an intensive 2-week dissection of a cat. It's a muscle dissection and an organ dissection. And we finish that off with some practicals. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what? They dissect cats. Don't worry. I know that sounds horrible, but just to assuage any concerns about that, first of all, the students do not have to dissect. They have the option not to. They can just observe, or they can do it completely online. I had done that before. It was all virtual for some students that really opposed. But I just want to make sure you understand that these are not people's cats, like house cats. There's a really bad feral cat problem in this country. Not around here so much, but in certain parts, like Midwest especially, where cats get out and then they make more cats. And these are cats that are essentially raised in the wild. And they are a real problem to wildlife. They decimate small mammal and bird populations. So they have to go up and they have to euthanize these cats, and then they get sold to chemical. This is more than you ever thought you probably need to know about cats, but I always feel like I need to explain that because it sounds terrible on paper. But I do think it's a skill they need to know. They're going to have to dissect in college, so I think it's important that they have a knowledge on how to do that. It is a skill just like anything that you have to learn, and ideally I'd like to help them to get through that. And if we do that, if we get to do the dissections, there are some practicals, which are tests where they memorize the skeletal system and they have to identify on models. And then at the end of the year, they do the cat dissection and they have to identify the muscles and organs. Finally, last slide here, and then you can go about your day. My resources. So basically everything's going to be up in my Google Classroom, and I'm going to be using that as the landing pad. That's where all my notes are going to be posted, review lectures, all that stuff. But also, there's other review materials besides what I offer. There's a ton. Khan Academy is an unbelievable resource. YouTube has countless tutorials and things that you can watch to help you understand it. And I just want to leave with this one thought. I want them to understand how to negotiate in this virtual world, because I'm sure that a lot of you that are watching this right now had a job where you went in and now you're working from home. And a lot of businesses, I think, realized that the productivity is maintaining and their overhead went down because of they don't have to maintain a building. So I think what I'm reading and what I'm hearing in podcasts is that a lot of businesses are going to maintain a large part of their virtual platform. And a lot of colleges are probably going to do the same thing. And what you're going to see is that one of the things these students have to learn is how to negotiate this world and how to come up with the answer for themselves. So I'm here to help them, but never before has my job been more of a facilitator role instead of just, hey, this is all the information. I'm here to help you learn it. So I'm hoping that they will learn that this year, or maybe that wasn't as much of a priority in past years. So I want to thank you for your time, and please feel free to email me with any questions. Have a nice day.